This is Kilkenny Castle.
Car park. You see an old building just immediately on the left-hand side where that green hedgerow is, and two gentlemen up on the balcony. That's the courthouse, and that was also used as a meeting place for the Normans, and that's where they promulgated the statutes of Kilkenny, which, by the way, we'll talk about when we get to Galway. And that affected the Galway people very much because it virtually drove them out of Galway, out of the native city, and they lived in a ghetto just outside the town of what was called the Tlada. And that was the direct result of these nefarious laws that were applied to them. Now, this is the car.
So this is another shot of Kilkenny Castle in Kilkenny, Ireland. It's taken from the parking area.
Who want to go to heaven? Of course, we all stood up immediately. He said, sit up. And we all sat up. Then he said, stand up all those who want to go to hell. Nobody stood up except Flanagan in the middle of the church. And Father Murphy said, Flanagan, do you want to go to hell? And Flanagan said, no, Father. He said, but I didn't like to see you stand there by yourself. Program here in Dublin, and it's for children, you see, and they give a special prize, you see, for the best, the most intelligent child on this program. So the MC said, now he said to the children, he said, I want you to tell me who was the greatest man that ever lived. And this is the boy stood up and said, he said, Sir Leonardo da Vinci. And the MC said, a very good answer. He said, well, he wasn't the greatest man that ever lived. And this other little boy said, please sir, he said, it was Alexander Graham Bell who invented the telephone. And the MC said, very good answer, but not quite what I was looking for. And then this little Jewish boy stood up and said, please sir, the greatest man that ever lived, he said, was St. Rather unusual for a little Jewish boy to say St. Patrick. Why did you say that? And the kid said, he said, well, deep in my heart, he said, I know it was Moses, but business is business. I mean, you gotta get it down. I like that. This fellow Shaughnessy was a hypochondriac. He was a terrible case altogether. When he died on his tombstone, he had his own epitaph, and it read, now will you believe I'm sick? God between us and all harm, but there's none of us perfect, as you know. Wait till I tell you. This judge here in Dublin was a bit cross-eyed like myself, honest to God, yes. And one day he was in court, and there was 3 fellas standing before him to be sentenced. And with the cross eyes, God help us, you can imagine what would happen. But when you hear this, so he was addressing the 3 of them, and he said to the first fella, what's your name? And the second fella answered, Pat Murphy. The judge says, I wasn't talking to you. And the third fella said, I never opened my mouth. Write it down, it's a good one. Write it down.
Although we are on an island surrounded by water, but you won't see its water on the menu, and you'll probably wonder why, because being 97% Roman Catholic. Friday, of course, was what they call the Church of Fast Day. You fasted on that day, you abstain from meat. Although I remember I've seen people sit to a 4-course fish dinner. I don't know how they related to that as far as fasting is concerned. But nevertheless, people always have fish on Friday, abstain from meat. And the result of that is now that they won't eat it any other day. In fact, they've turned slightly against it. But bit by bit, there's a big campaign being waged in the press and on the radio and TV to get people to eat fish again. Unfortunately, we have Sellafield, the big nuclear plant, opposite us, on the other side of the Irish Sea, and people are a little loath because of the radioactive waters. The old Chernobyl thing again, you see, being pumped into the sea, and you know about the Greenpeace and all they've done. So that's the thing about the fish. Now, the port has been modernised, as you can see, over there on the left-hand side. You see it? The George Patrick Purcell, that ship. That's one of those live export cattle ships. You see it, and that'll go out to the Mediterranean somewhere, or out to the Middle East to bring these cattle out. See it over there. Now, to bear out what I was telling you about the agriculture this morning, you see these grain silos all over. You see them just over there, with the chutes coming out of the silo itself to take in the grain from the grain ships. We haven't, I cannot supply enough grain for ourselves because of this change in the agriculture. Now, let's to export all of the Waterford class that's produced here, as well as fine precision instruments and medical equipment. We have several factories there besides Waterford class to carry out this work today. Open up the first page of that, you'll see the marriage, the betrothal in fact, of the King of Leinster's daughter to Richard E. Clare, just outside this building. That's Reginald's Tower, the only building that survives from the Gaelic period in this town of Waterford. That was the tower where the gold and silver coins were kept and minted, and where the state archives were kept. The rest of the town, of course, was made of wood, as all buildings were, right through the Middle Ages. And when you read in a book, he or she was within or outside the pale, in other words, in or outside convention, that's what it meant. You were within the establishment, if you were within the pale, in the area, within this arc, something like Offa's in Wales, a big palisade, behind which the Normans consolidated their bridgehead, built the castle in Dublin, built the cathedral, and then when enough of them had arrived, they had sufficient forces, they broke out from the pale, north, south, or east and west, and the whole country then was subjected. That's actually what the pale means. He or she was within the pale, or outside the pale. We use it in the term of convention today. In the old days it meant you were with the establishment, with the powers to be. Now, the small town of Waterford has a theatre here, and during the next month, the month after next, September, a lot of opera buses come here from all over Europe to attend an opera man from the Metropolitan Opera House in New York, from Covent Garden, and they perform recitals of operas here in this town. Now, we move on, and I'll tell you something now about the Waterford class. In Dublin we talked, I hope not at great length to bore you, but long enough to emphasize about Dublin's great past as an imperial city, the second city of the empire. We showed you the facades of some of the fine houses, and I think you remember me telling you that Waterford glass was used, in a sense that was used as chandeliers, drinking goblets, etc., for the inhabitants of these fine houses. Now the glass itself was established here around about 1723. This is the period when it was established. The people who established it went over to Europe and brought over glass blowers and cutters. They taught the local people how to produce this very fine crystal, all handmade, of course. And you see in what we would call a haggard sort of little field, a cross standing all by itself. You see it there? See that stone cross? Over there on the left. And that commemorates the victims of the famine. Now, I did tell you on the first day that we have 3.5 million people living here in the Republic today. Men, women and children, all native-born Irish people. In 1845, which is not all that long ago when you come to think of it, there were 10 million people living here. Now, how do we lose 6.5 million. Well, this came about in 1845 when a blight hit the potato crop. Now the potato was the mainstay not only of the Irish, but of the English, the Scots, the Welsh, and of many people in Europe. The common man's bread and butter, the basic ingredient of his diet. In fact, recent studies have proved that people who have been shipwrecked or isolated have lived on potatoes and potato peelings for months on end, and upon medical examination showed little or no titillating effects. I mean, not terribly so, as one would never would say you had no potatoes, nothing at all to eat, or very little. So the potato could keep you alive. And that was one of the reasons why a man who in fact lived here in the town that we're coming to now, the Walter Willie, he was responsible for bringing this potato to Ireland, along of course as the tobacco. He brought the tobacco as well, but he brought the potato. So a large population was being carried upon the land, 10 million, on the strength of this potato. 1845, the famine hit. A blight hit all the potato crops. The crop failed. Well, the price of potatoes went up. The first year passed. The blight hit again in 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. And that's how the 6.5 million either disappeared beneath the earth, victims of dysentery and typhus, or else, if they'd any sense, as some of them had, and some little money and belongings, to sell everything and pay their passage to the new world of either the United States, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. That's how so many of them went out there at that period of 1845 to 1850. Now they say that the coffin ships, as they call them, the three boats and vessels, where all these immigrants had to lie and sleep in very bad conditions beneath the decks as steerage passengers. But no right, they, if ever allowed up on deck to breathe fresh air, they say that the coffin ships took the routes, the sea routes, from Ireland to any of these countries, where some of these ships were so badly put together in such a bad state for repair that they actually disappeared beneath the waves. A man called Aubrey de Vere actually went, an aristocrat, turned the ordinary clothes of a simple peasant, and he went as a steerage passenger, survived the journey, came back and wrote a memorial to the House of Commons and Lords, and exposed the whole scandal of the money that was being made at the expense of these poor immigrants, and that was stopped forever. Something like Wilberforce, or the chap who brought in the act against cruelty to animals. You know, a humanitarian, Aubrey de Vere. Now, so these people died, the ones who died here were buried in common on man's grave. And if you travel around Ireland, here, there, and everywhere, you'll come across these crosses. Sometimes on hilltops, sometimes in fields, sometimes just mounds of earth. But unless someone told you what they were, you would never know that they contained literally hundreds of people who were just, because of typhus, had to be scooped up quickly and dropped into these graves. Now that was the Great Famine of 1845-1850, where, as I said before, a population of 10 million was reduced to 3.5 within a matter of 5 years. Now, at the same time all this was happening, shiploads of food, of agricultural produce were leaving the country. You see, in those days, people looked upon events like that as acts of God. If you read your insurance policy at home, you're insured against every bad area to bury the tree. A very close friend of mine who came from Central Europe on a visit here, right there to other contexts besides tourists in Europe, the first thing she said to me was, where are the trees? And I said, well, we have trees. She said, well, I have no trees, no forests here. Which if you look intently, you won't see forests. What you'll see is reforestation. Small conifer trees being grown. So that's a belated attempt to catch up on this business. That's how it all done. So the environment, of course, is very important to have your own trees, as well as, of course, paying the big sum of money to these people in Europe who spend money elsewhere. They'll get to come to this country, you know? But we have to because that's where it is. Anyway, to get back to all this, he was out in the forest riding to hounds when he came into a clearing and discovered an old chap dying of hunger. So he best town is the man support, what about the sword, he brought him back to the castle against Hudson. Before the old chap expired, before he died, he asked the Lord to let his ear talk for a moment. And he whispered into his ear, he said, "My liege, I know that you suffer from a speech impediment," which of course the Carthy did, and he went out to stammer. But you could go on to the hearing of the course where you found me, you were also fine, and these are kind of stone. Kiss that, and your stammer will be cured. And of course, McCarthy, who had told her about the secret of Queen Elizabeth, was very much a physical realist. He wasn't a dreamer. He was no proof of something, but nevertheless, Penny was not on a try, any remedy. And he went to kiss the stone. And before you know, the stage erupted. He was cured. Now, he became so jealous of the stone that any of his enemies might find him, he was way up the mountain. And everyone who comes down to Barney has to climb on right up the mountain, high up the castle, kiss the stone. And how you do it is like this. Where the bend is now is because that's the wall where the stone is defended against the wall. You sit with your back to that, and then you lie down both opposite. You lean back in a more true bow, and you kiss the wall, the stone. But make sure you don't fall. We have two rusty Irish soldiers, ex-Irish soldiers, and of the most impeccable reputation. One of these, I think it's always been Benny Hill, haven't you? Oh, yeah. Benny Hill, happy people in the bottom. Now, this is where I'm waiting. But they never that. There was a guy actually who used to take a George Master's position. One day we were up there and we heard, well, we led away by the police. Well, they put the gentleman George Master's position, but many people kissed this stone. People such as Mr. Churchill in 1911, we have a photograph of the Barney Woman there, of the Winston actually standing, top half the whole lot. Well, everyone's always, they're off the other. Oh, millions and millions of people kissed. Anyway. And, well, I think it's actually over there, you know, here in the Maureen story, that everybody kissed the stone. I often wonder about that myself, too. It's a very anyway. And then he said, "You wouldn't do that, because it's pretty much a resource anytime." So we kick every time I did. So anyway, Winston Churchill, all the people that you would know in the South world, that we've read about, people in Blockburn, etc., all of these come up here to the stone, so why not stop and kiss? Now, joking aside, be very serious. The only reason why that chap is sitting there is in case anyone would fall, or, panic. Because you're looking down to 28 feet to the ground. Your head turns downwards at this stage, and you have to hold on to your beautiful body, you see. But it can be quite a thrill and enjoyable. Anyway, the main thing is to land that over, you get your back up on your feet again, and down you come, all the way down to the very left. We never do this during naps, by the way. Well, it's all about the Irish, or very funny people who do nothing in this country except people over to Brighton to blow up the British capital. These people are looked upon, you know, always do you good job or something like that, depending upon your political outlook. So don't ever jerk with your hands if you're in safe. But your hands if you're in safe. You see the morality, the trick, and the 20% majority. Now, of course, you know what's tied up in that. It hurts. It's hard to morality. Because, you know, the people you and I are now, what we were when we were 20, what we will be when we're much older, we change every so often. The people protections change and all that. And we have about 30,000 people in this country living at the present time. Second time now. But they cannot get married. Because the constitutional ban on that, if you marry a second time, you're a bigamist. And when we have more time until we've got sufficient cases that you can compare and say how lucky you are back home. You know? Without the flaws and everything else about the breakups, and who wants a breakup? Nobody does at any time. But there are other aspects to it too. Lots of people come here privately by train, mainly Europeans. At the present time we have 10,000 people from France living here in the country permanently, mainly around this area. about 11,000 people from Holland, the Dutch, and about 9,000 West Germans. Now these are mainly young people who, because of the grim experiences of the past and the tarnish that's been associated with their history, they've decided to break with the modern state of Germany and come here and find an alternative way of life. They're usually people in their under 30 or in their early 30s. And they bought up a number of farmhouses. So if on our travels round you will see cars with F, NL or D on the back of the number plate, you know these are either people living here or relatives visiting these young people who are residents of the country. It may not be a bad thing, by the way, because, joking aside, after all I told you about life here, and that was only one little aspect, lifting the carpet, lifting the curtain, just that little bit, amusing and all as it is at times, it may be of no harm if we had other people from Europe with different ideas here, because you can get a very narrow, insular outlook if you are just living here among ourselves, with no influences from outside. So this could be a good thing in itself. Now, there are 6,000, as I told you before. Many of these now are setting up houses. The children grow up into these bed and breakfast establishments. I'll tell you more about that later on. When you get back home, there may be friends or relatives that you meet, or people in your clubhouse or in your church, who would say, well, I'd like to take a holiday, but coach touring or travelling like that would be my cup of tea. Are there alternatives? Well, of course, there are alternatives. Either hiring a car, or, failing that, travelling between the centres by train, or by ordinary public service bus, and then stopping off and going on walking tours, hiring a bicycle or hiring a car locally. Now, most of these houses that you see the green shamrock outside, see this little green sign here on the left, this indicates that this house has been checked not only by the tourist board, but by the police. Now, you haven't seen many of our policemen or women, except in Dublin. You don't see many of them on the roadside. We don't have traffic police as such. But I can assure you that in this country of ours, not much goes unobserved, because the people, because there are so few of us, are rather inquisitive about each other. I did mention that to you about neighbours and that sort of thing. And the police know who's who and what's what. And you can rest assured if you had children with you, or if you're travelling as women or men by yourselves, you will be perfectly safe in any of these buildings, because the proprietors have been completely checked that they are people of a high and reputable character. Otherwise, that shamrock, the indication that it has been approved, would not be placed there. Now, what you get in these places is a bedroom, carpeted, furnished, with a basin, hot and cold water faucet, you know, what you have in a hotel, wash hand basin, towels, base cloths, carpeted floor, woolen blankets on the bed, and clean linen placed there every day. In other words, if I'm sleeping there tonight, I leave in the morning and somebody else comes the following day, the linen is changed. Now, if you want to slip along to the Jordans or the loo or the bathroom, whichever you wish, you just slip down the corridor and use the family bathroom or WC. Should you prefer to take a shower or a bath, that can be arranged sometimes for as little as 20 pennies extra. They don't provide water like that because, remember, these are all private houses, not like a hotel where water is running all the time. But there is hot water in your room, hot and cold water. There's etc. the whole lot there if you want to perform your ablutions in the morning. Now, when I was told, you come down in the morning and you get a full Irish breakfast, sometimes more elaborate than what we get in the hotels. And on top of that, you get the opportunity of meeting fellow travellers on the way. They can tell you about what to avoid, where to go, etc. And the proprietors of these places, usually people of middle age, are more interested in you, perhaps, than you are in them, and they are a mine of information. Views over the sea. Some very good views to be had here normally of Ballinskillig Bay, where the fishing fleet now is based in this area of Kerry. You see it now over there on the right. You may or may not be able to see it. At least you can see some of the breakers down there. There's a huge inlet called Ballinskillig Bay. Journey down the other side of the mountain. Up here, yeah? Well, I'm just trying to keep everything in perspective. Not today, no.